Hello, this is me answering your questions about novel writing. This is my first Facebook Live. I've been in a social media challenge and they challenged us to get on there live and answer your questions, so thanks for all your questions. So I'd like to know how you stay motivated and see it through to the end. Well, the key to that is forget about motivation. Actually schedule your writing time and be realistic about how you schedule your writing time. So don't challenge yourself to do it every day if you think that's going to be impossible, but it might be possible to do it first thing in the morning, get up half an hour earlier, say on Saturdays, or for you it might be on Thursday evening the kids go to a club and you've got some time then. So scheduling it is much more important than trying to find this elusive thing called motivation. What was your biggest push to start? I guess that means start writing a novel. Well, thanks for that question. Well, I started years ago. I started when I was a kid, when I was about 8. I think it was my dad liked writing and liked reading, and I just got really intrigued by it and started keeping notebooks. Biggest push to start this actual novel that I'm writing now? I started getting really hooked on Agatha Christie. I started getting really hooked on Golden Age crime novels, and I had always been put off by crime because I didn't like the gory stuff, but then I realised I actually really like mysteries. I used to do those logic puzzles when I was a kid, and I wanted to write a mystery book because I just read so many that I really loved. So with this specific one, that's how I started. How do you create interesting and intriguing characters? Do you plan this out before you start writing, or do they kind of emerge as you go along? Yeah, good question. Well, I think different people do different things, but for me, I always get the characters first and then I imagine them in a location. So I guess it's the characters and a place together. So the characters inhabiting a place, because I love the idea of places, particularly buildings, having a history and of characters' personalities and characters' families being connected to that history and being influenced by it. So I would say it's the location and the people at the same time, and then because I've connected them to the place, interesting things start to happen. But nowadays I'm starting to plan much more thoroughly in advance, but I start with the characters and then plan the plot points. When I first started writing, I didn't really do that. I didn't really know how to do that, but now I do know more about it. So I'm absolutely fine to plan first, write a bit, plan a bit more, write a bit, plan a bit more, plan as I go along and change my plan as I go. If you know what the story will be, do you know what the story will be, or does it unravel and develop as you are, I think that means in the middle of writing? It definitely unravels and develops as I'm writing, although yes, I do know what the story will be and how it will end. I think for me, I have to actually write in order to know what I think and what I think is going to happen in a general sense, whatever I'm writing. So it's like I'm putting my thoughts down on paper when I'm writing. So then I know what I want it to be about, and then the story emerges from the writing process. So I've got a general idea, but then it starts to develop as I write. For me, that's extremely important. It's a really important part of the process. I couldn't do it without writing first. Where do you start with marketing your books, Louise? Well, I worked in education all my life, so a couple of years ago when I stopped working full-time, my full-time teaching job, I had to learn about business and marketing. And I actually think that all writers should learn about business and marketing now, because it's easy to be suspicious of the idea of business and marketing. But actually, you know, if you're marketing something good, something that certain people will enjoy, what you're doing is you're trying to reach out to your audience or to your readers and tell them about something that they will actually quite like. So there's no need to treat it with suspicion. You just need to learn how to do it specifically for the thing that you're trying to sell. So the best way to learn is to learn from other writers who have already done it. So I've connected with writers who are interested in marketing their work on social media. I've read books by writers who write about marketing. I've written blog posts about it myself, and the process of writing blog posts has meant that I've had to think about it. I've interviewed people just to find out how to do it, and I've also done online courses in it. And the great thing about online courses is that you can take or leave them, so you're not in a classroom. You can't stop and rewind the tutor, but on an online course you can stop, you can skip. You're not going to offend them if you rewind them and listen to a bit again, or if you totally and utterly disagree with them. So that's been useful for getting the basics. The best way is not to think of it as marketing actually, but rather think of it as connecting with readers. So I hope that helps, rather a general way of thinking about it. Okay, I'm going through, for those who just joined us, I'm going through the questions you asked me about the novel writing process. So hello everybody. Please say hello in the comments so I don't feel like I'm here on my own. Do you practice writing every day, and do you keep a diary? I'm nosy, what's in it? Actually that says, do you keep a dairy? But I'm hoping that means diary and not dairy, because I definitely don't have a dairy. Okay, so no, I don't practice writing every day. When people say you have to write every day, I mean, of course, for some people it works writing every day, but generally when people say write every day, what they actually mean is write regularly. So don't let that put you off if you can't write every day, or if you say you wrote every day for 3 days and then you dropped one day and then you couldn't do it the next day because your kids were sick, or something else happened, something else came up and you broke the habit. Oh, well, it's easy to get despondent, so don't let that get you despondent is what I'm trying to say. Practice your writing regularly and schedule it. That's much more important than writing every day. Yeah, I know that if you get into a habit of getting up at, say, half an hour earlier every day, it can help to have that routine. But yeah, all right, get up half an hour earlier, but don't beat yourself up if you don't actually manage to write. I'm trying to do yoga every day. Have I managed it so far? No, I haven't, but that doesn't mean I'm going to give up on it, because I think it's important, and it's the same with writing. So be kind to yourself, be gentle with yourself. Write regularly, but if you don't manage to do it, it's probably because life got in the way. So be kind to yourself. Do I keep a diary? I was thinking about this the other day because my mum keeps one, and we travelled down to a funeral in Cornwall together recently, so we got quite a long time to chat. And I've just managed to persuade her to get a smartphone for the first time. She's actually having a bit of trouble getting used to it. And she saw me taking photos of the things on our journey. And she said, oh, I haven't got into the habit of taking photos all the time with my smartphone yet. I prefer to keep a written diary. And it made me think, well, yeah, actually, the photos that I take on significant events, like the journey to Cornwall, are a bit like a diary. And when I am looking for a photo and I flip back through my photos, it's like I'm reliving some of those memories. So it is like I keep a photo diary. Yeah, I'm admitting to being totally obsessed with taking photos. I hope I haven't got my phone out all the time, but I do take photos of significant things. So it does act like a kind of a diary, but I don't keep a journal or a diary every day. I know a lot of writers who do, and if you're interested in that, look up Julia Cameron and what she says about morning pages. I do really admire people who do that, even though I don't do it myself. This is more an immediate question, but are you writing a new novel, or will you be talking about the process in general? So I'm writing a new novel, not talking about the process in general. I'm happy to harp on for ages about the process in general, by the way. Those of you who know me will know that I'm very good at waffling on about things. But this is accountability for me. I'm getting you to share the writing process as I'm writing this novel to make me turn up and do it. And also because some of my students were interested in hearing about how I actually go about writing a novel. So they asked me to share the behind the scenes to it. So the reason I'm on here talking now, and I've been sharing bits of the novel writing process, is not because I'm incredibly narcissistic, or maybe I am, But because I'm writing a new novel, I'm trying this thing where I let you in behind the scenes. So that's what I'm doing. So no, I'm not talking generally about it, not right now anyway, but I'm happy to do that if you want me to. How do you get critical distance from your work? Well, that's really hard. I don't think I actually do at the time that I've written it. If I read The Water's Edge now, which is my novel from like 15 years ago, ish. If I read it now, sometimes it feels like somebody else wrote it. Like I can get so much distance because it's years ago. And somebody actually wrote an essay in an academic book and included The Water's Edge and The Haven Home for Delinquent Girls, my other novel. So they literally wrote a critical piece about the book, like a piece of literary theory. I was obviously very flattered about that. But they wrote things that would never have occurred to me, and that really did allow me to get literal critical distance from both novels. But while I'm writing them, I'm not sure if that's actually possible to do. I don't think that you need to worry about it too much. What I have done though is I've recently joined a writing workshop group in Brighton, near where I live, and we're going to be critiquing each other's work, and it's really, really useful to have readers who don't know anything about the characters, are not emotionally involved in the process and not emotionally involved in the plot, don't know anything about it, to just see their reaction. So it's not necessarily a critical distance, but it helps to see the reaction. How long do you write for, and which method do you use? Oh God, I don't know if I've got a method. Oh, maybe I have. That sounds very serious. How long do I write for? When I'm able to dedicate the time to it, I find the ideal time, and a lot of people say this, the ideal time is about 4 hours. And then to not write for the rest of the day. But I do sometimes get really obsessed and just write for a very long time. Now, before we had our little boy, I could do that. I could get up in my pyjamas, write, and not get dressed. Now, that's not necessarily a good idea. That is something that I did when I wrote The Haven. Got really so into it that I would just, I guess, be obsessed with writing it for hours and hours and hours. It's not possible when you've got a family to look after, which is a good thing because it actually reins that in. And 4 hours is supposed to be the ideal, and it allows you to pace yourself. So that's how long do I write for. Now, I'm aiming for 4 hours a day, but it's not always possible. As I said, I haven't got time to write every day at the moment, but that's an ideal. Sometimes that's in 2-hour chunks. Writing for less than 2 hours, find that quite difficult. I find it really hard to concentrate if I know I've only got half an hour. But if you have got other responsibilities like a job, like kids, like any other kind of life, and let's face it, who hasn't? Sometimes you do have to get used to writing in half an hour bursts, say on the train or on the bus, or half an hour earlier, get up half an hour earlier in the morning. So sometimes it's necessary to get used to working for shorter amounts of time. And what was the other part of that? Which method do you use? Well, I talked earlier about putting an interesting character in a place, in a building. And if I've got a method, it's writing about a building, writing about a place and connecting the character to it. Where do you get your inspiration? Well, I would turn that around and say that everything is inspiration. You can tell a story about absolutely anything. So pick up an object now and it will have a history. It will have come from somewhere. It will be made by somebody. It will come from a particular country and a particular culture within that country. And the people who made it will have a family. And it's going to have a destination. It's going to end up somewhere. It's going to belong to somebody. It doesn't matter what object you pick up. It's going to be able to inspire you somehow. So sometimes it's about opening your eyes to what is actually out there. However, I keep coming back to this, but it is place, it's buildings, it's going to interesting places that really gets me. And actually sitting in them, it's like being mindful and meditating, but with a purpose. So you're sitting in the place and really looking around you at the details, and hopefully I'll have a cup of tea and a notebook and just writing down some words and getting a sense of what it's like. Sometimes it's about being patient enough to get through the boredom and come out the other side. What do you do when you get stuck? Oh, I'd like to say that I meditate and go for a long walk and I don't know, go on artist dates, which is one thing Julia Cameron suggests. I'd like to say that I did all that. Probably watch Poirot reruns on ITV and eat cake is the actual truth. But it's totally natural to get stuck. If you're working on any long project, then you're going to get stuck at some point. And actually see that as a productive thing. So when you get stuck, you just have to ask some honest questions of yourself. Why am I stuck? What could possibly happen next? Just let yourself off the hook. If I don't have to actually write this, what could possibly happen? Could I leap forward and write a chapter from later in the novel? Is there some research that you need to do that will help get you unstuck? Quite often, when you think you've got writer's block, actually it's because you haven't researched the thing you're writing about enough, so you don't have enough detail in your head to write it, or the thing, frankly, isn't interesting enough and you're really interested in writing about something else. So it is really a matter of coming back to those questions. And sometimes, again, this is about scheduling. I talked about scheduling before, but sometimes stuckness is about wading through it and turning up and writing. Even if you sit down at your computer and just write gobbledygook, you still turned up and done some writing. There's sometimes you just have to wade through the stuckness. Sorry about mixing my metaphors there. How do you know when it's finished? I think you kind of start getting a bit fed up with it and you think, is this finished? Yeah, actually, I think it is. That's one way. Another way is, well, I wrote my plan. I was very organised, wrote my plan in advance, and I just hit the full stop on the last sentence. And because I was following my plan, I know it's finished. Yeah, but of course there's redrafting after that. So that could be a question about how do you know when the redrafting is done. Well, with The Water's Edge, my first novel, it was a bit of an anticlimax. I redrafted the final scene and then got a real sense of, oh my God, I've finished it. I've actually finished it. Now what do I do? So it was a weird feeling of anticlimax. You don't necessarily know because, of course, if you're going to submit it somewhere, you send off your submission package and they might write back and say that they want you to make changes. They almost certainly won't just publish it as it is, so there'll be an editorial conversation. So I don't think I've even got the final version of The Haven because there were so many edits after it got to the proof stage that some of them I was just listing in an email and they put them into the book, but I didn't necessarily get the manuscript back again. So sometimes it's a matter of that conversation with an editor and then, right, we're going to press now, it's finished, it's done. And that happens very suddenly. So I suppose my answer to how do you know when it's finished is you kind of don't necessarily, but it's okay. Anything about your journey would be interesting, Louise. Okay, well, I'm trying to share the journey of writing the novel that I'm working on now with you. So I'm glad you're interested in it. I'm not sure who asked that question, but hello if you're out there. So I will be trying to share my journey with you. That's what I'm doing now. I'd like to know how you start quite a big task. Okay, well, I've written about this a lot, so I think I can answer this question. It comes back to that a journey of 1,000 miles, is it? Starts with a single footstep, or if you're in a wheelchair, wheel of the chair. I like both. So if you're trying to start, don't do the whole thing at once. This is the same with travelling around the world, buying a house. What else is big? I don't know, climbing a mountain. You don't go, right, I'm going to climb the mountain this afternoon. You prepare and you break it down into smaller tasks. You break it down to a to-do list. Imagine you are planning your friend's wedding. You don't go, right, let's get on with it. Let's just have the wedding this afternoon. Unless you're eloping or something, I suppose. So you break it down to smaller tasks, right? What kind of flowers do you want? Who's going to do the ceremony? And how are we going to organise the entertainment, and who's going to do the catering, and then each of those categories will have its own subheadings, and I call that breaking things down into small steps. So you just turn up and write a page. That's how you start. And then you turn up another time and write a page, and turn up another time and write a page. Well, let's imagine you wrote 2 pages each time you turned up. Let's imagine you wrote 1,000 words. Do that 90 times and you'll have your first draft of a 90,000 word novel. So it's actually about the scheduling and the turning up, not about it being a massive task, because no one writes 90,000 words in one afternoon. You write 1,000 words at a time, or 500 words at a time, or 250 words at a time. But one thing that really helps is not editing as you go. Wait till you finish the first draft in order to edit. Mine's simply, where do you write? Do you sit in an office, or a local coffee shop, or a tree house, or a combination of all 3? Well, I'm in my writing shed now, so here it is. So I write in my writing shed. Do I sit in a coffee shop? Yes, I do like writing in coffee shops. I don't have a tree house. How do you keep writing, editing, progressing when the inner critic rears its ugly head? Oh yeah, there we go. Well, let me tell you this. This is, I guess some people don't know this, so it's interesting to know. Every writer, people who've won the Nobel Prize for Literature and the Booker Prize and all sorts, even really professional writers with, you know, loads of books out and agents and editors, they all hear this voice of the inner critic, just because we're human beings and everybody does. Especially when you try something new, because that inner critic actually has a function. It's trying to keep you safe. It's trying to stop you from trying something new to protect you. So I don't know if you've read Susan Jeffers' Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway, but that's the kind of ethos we're talking about here. So Dorothea Brand calls the inner critic the judge, and Natalie Goldberg calls it the editor. It's a matter of accepting that that inner critic is there and doing it anyway. And Tara Brach talks about this in her book Radical Acceptance, which I really love. It's very Buddhist, and I'm not a Buddhist myself, but I still really like the philosophy behind that. It's Radical Acceptance by Tara Brach. So she talks about accepting things and doing it anyway, similar to the Susan Jeffers book, but she goes into more detail about that idea of acceptance. So yeah, sometimes that inner critic can just get too overwhelming, but you have to remember to be kind to yourself. Give yourself a break. Don't force yourself to do it all the time. Excuse me, I just have some of my ginger beer. I do have to make sure I've got a stock of ginger beer in the fridge. So be kind to yourself. If the inner critic rears its ugly head, be nice to yourself. Go on a long walk, eat cake and watch Poirot, and whatever it is that you need to do. Get in the bath, and don't be critical of yourself more than you can help, because it's okay. You can turn up another day. I'd like to know where you get your inspiration from. I think I already covered that one. Yes, somebody else said that. It's been lovely hanging out with you. I hope that you found that interesting. Please leave a comment below if you did, or if you have any more questions you want to ask. And I will be sharing my writing process with you over the next few weeks and days. See you soon.